Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 30th edition of the Biweekly Kubernetes SIG Contributor Experience meeting. Before we head on to the agenda of the meeting, a couple of points. This meeting has been recorded, so please be aware of what you say and do in this meeting. And another thing is that we are covered by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which essentially boils down to just be nice to everyone in this call and don't hurt anyone's sentiments. With that, are there any new attendees in the call? Is anyone attending for the first time? If they are and they want to introduce themselves, please feel free to unmute and do so. Looking at the people in the meeting, I don't think anyone here is absolutely new. So let's move ahead. Events. Nigel, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we had our meeting this week. We started working on the room layouts. And so that's pretty exciting. It feels like things are getting closer. At least on Monday, we were 70 days away. So we're today minus that, minus Monday, minus as we established in the banter period. My brain is not working this morning. But yeah, we're getting close to KubeCon. We seem to be on track. The things that we are waiting on now is to hear back about the short list of spots for where the celebration is going to be. We also have registration open. If you haven't registered for the Contributor Summit, you may now do that. We also have the CFP open for the Contributor Summit, and we really would like to get more submissions. So I will put links in for all of that stuff, but we definitely are looking to get more participation, more people signed up on Reg, more talks submitted to the CFP. Other than that, everything is moving along pretty smoothly from what I remember.
Are there any questions for Nigel?
Anybody have questions for me related to this? Because I will be talking again later about other things. So yeah.
Bob put in the chat that we will probably get more with the next bump now that invites are out for speakers.
Right. So yeah, the KubeCon acceptances went out. And so yeah, once we make the next announcement and people have more of an idea that travel is going to be approved, or whatever, what have you, for like what the blockers have been so far, might get more participation. And it's been interesting as well, like talk to people, telling them about it, and they're like, oh, I've never gone before, and like trying to figure out like why, so that we can make it an experience that's beneficial to those folks as well.
Nice. Also, a couple of people asked about like what kind of topics can be submitted to the Contributor Summit. So I think that's a good sign that people are interested to speak in the summit.
Yeah. Where did that happen? I missed it.
A couple of people from my day job basically asked
nice.
if they can submit. So I pointed like anything which is related to Kubernetes contributions specifically, or Kubernetes as a project. If it helps the project in any way, they may submit.
To the benefit of the contributors that are there, about the project generally. Obviously no vendor pitches, but that almost goes without saying, but then people still do it.
Awesome. Anything else on the Contributor Summit side of things?
Not right now. I will prepare more remarks for next time. I haven't really summarized the notes or anything, but if you have not registered, please register. If you have ideas for talks, please submit them. And please tell your colleagues and associates to submit as well.
Cool. Something from Bob on the chat, and I think it's mostly related to KubeCon and not just the Contributor Summit. People should look out for hotel rooms if they did not get one near the venue, as people would be canceling.
Yeah. Travel tips with Bob.
Yeah, I pretty recommend everyone, like, as soon as the room block's announced, book a room, and then when you know if you're going or not, cancel.
Yeah. For people who are trying to be conservative about budget, I'll point out that you can stay in the Loop, which is the center of downtown in Chicago, and there are both a train and an express bus that go to McCormick. That's what I'm doing because I just can't stomach paying over $400 a night for a hotel room in a middle grade hotel.
I do not recommend the express bus. It is not very express.
Okay. So prefer the green line then, huh?
Yep. I guess that also depends a bit on like time of day, but Chicago traffic tends to like really just screw anything over if you're trying to like get there in any sort of like timely fashion.
Chicago traffic is what I define as insane. Yeah.
But but just as a comparison, hotels in the Loop in November are in the range of 150 to 250 a night.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Huge.
The Loop is also where all the food is.
Yeah. And I figured I was going to be there at night anyway, because that's what I'm going to be eating. And I figured even if I took a cab every day, it would still come out in my favor.
Yeah.
I'm staying in the Citizen M if anybody wants to make it. Citizen M built a brand new hotel in the Loop, and it looks nice. And we've already got a couple of other CNCF people staying there. So, and it's close to the Green Line.
Awesome. Let's move on to mentoring. Does anyone have any updates there?
Sorry, I haven't checked in. The group mentoring for Customize should be, the cohort should be done by now, but I haven't checked in on the results.
No, it's not done. It is still ongoing.
Yeah.
They had their I'd say like they had a bit of a delayed start, but like they had a like bug scrub meeting today. But it seems to be going okay so far.
I think we had a couple of projects in LFX as well. I know that release engineering proposed a project. Do we know of any other projects that are there in LFX this cycle? Okay, we can probably check later, and if they need any help, we can probably go and help them. Are there any questions for the mentoring programs? It looks like none. Let's move on to contributor comms.
I will make one remark, which is we had the first part of the 128 retro yesterday for the release team. And we had a long discussion about how the shadow program runs for the release team, because there continue to be problems with low completion among the shadows. And so there was a lot of discussion on how to address that. Honestly, I think part of it has nothing to do with mentoring, and more it is that a lot of the release team has not felt authoritative. And we're discussing that in SIG release. As in they didn't feel like they had the individual authority to say dismiss a shadow who was flaking out. And I'm like, no, you're the lead. You can dismiss them.
Yeah.
There isn't someone else. But
right.
But the problem is actually it's goofy because when the release team was kind of ad hoc, we all felt that we had as much authority as existed because we put it together. But since the release team is a system now, people are worried about sort of going outside of their lane. And so we need to sort of pull it back and say, no, you know, for this 4 months, you are management.
Do you know, did it ever get merged? The like, if you flake out, you're getting removed from the org?
Honestly, no rules at all about dismissing shadows, and for that matter, dismissing section leads ever got wrote down. And that was one of the main things we addressed, is that it's always been implied that people could get dropped, but nobody ever actually wrote it down. Or wrote down, what the process is.
I think.
So.
Sorry, Josh, go ahead. Please finish.
No, go ahead.
So about that, I was going to say that Grace has, I think, a PR drafted, which notes down what would happen if either a role lead or a shadow is inactive. I think what happens if a shadow is inactive was already written somewhere, but this release cycle there were topics brought up on what if a role lead is inactive. And I don't think we ever had written down any punitive actions like getting removed from the org. Those were only corrective measures being written down in the docs. I think I'll also go through the discussion which happened yesterday. And this sounds like a nice opportunity to write down certain things.
Yeah, and that's going to be circumstantial though, right? Because we'd only remove them from the org if they specifically got added to the org in order to be a section lead, right?
Yes.
Well, no, even as a, like, the idea is like, if they are a new shadow, new to the project, whatever, if they they were joining the release team as part of the shadow program and they don't complete the release team, they flake out completely, they should get the boot.
Yeah, no, we're talking about section leads. So none of these people are going to be new. They'll have already been through the release team at least once.
No, sorry. I was in terms of like just booting people. That's at least what I was referring to.
Yeah. So, no, but we have had people who did not become org members until they became section leads. Now, in some cases, it's just because they didn't get around to it. But there have been a few cases where becoming a release team section lead was the only reason they qualified for org membership, and that would be one we would consider if somebody flaked out. And by flaked out, I mean not quit as section lead, but sort of just vanished without notice.
How could someone be a role lead without being added to the org? They need to be added to the release team first, right? The release team GitHub group, which needs them to be members.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So all shadows are part of the are made org members to join those certain groups. In the forgot the YAML that was. So so I do want to talk about that discussion with that Bob brought up, maybe not at this meeting, but sometime later, about if shadows are dropped and if shadows are added to the org because through from the release team, like, what do we do with the org membership? I think that should be discussed maybe in I don't know, this meeting or another meeting.
Yeah.
When the good time for that is.
It needs to be talked about at large. I mean, sorry about
it's been brought up multiple times. Like, there's open discussions where there's comments explicitly stating that they should get the boot. I just don't think it's ever been like, this has certainly been discussed multiple times before in various retro notes, various GitHub discussions and issues. I just don't think it made it to a guideline.
I think that's key.
We just need to codify it.
Yeah.
I think overall we never wrote down any punitive measures for inactivity. In the release team, we only have punitive measures if you violate a Kubernetes code of conduct value, or if you are not active in the Kubernetes project for a year. So that needs to happen.
I mean, I feel like we need two levels. So one is we need to meet with the release team and sort of codify the sort of, shadow handling process, because shadows are going to drop out, right? The reason why like I was saying on the retro meeting there, is the reason why we originally went from 1 to 2 shadows per section for 110 was because shadows drop out. And that's considered normal. So we want that, and then we also want a sort of general rule for us for ContribEx, because, well, the release team is the biggest place where people get sort of accelerated org membership. It's not the only time that people get accelerated org membership. And I feel like we need sort of a general rule, because we can enforce it and say, hey, look, if you got your org membership specifically in order to do a task, and then you don't do that task, the org membership disappears.
So, while it doesn't explicitly call out the task stuff, like if you're became an org member for a task, we did increase the requirements for becoming an org member in general. Basically just having to have a longer proven track record of being active within the project.
Yeah.
We also shortened the duration for booting out people. No, we were at 18, now we're at 12.
Yep. Outside of the release team, do you know like where other places where people get accelerated membership?
Sometimes it happens for comms. Because I mean the problem with is that you need to have org membership to interact with the bots. And if somebody volunteers to do certain things, that can be a problem.
No, you don't need org membership to interact with most of the bots. Things can be assigned and all that without being, if you're open a PR, it means okay to test, but like assign a lot of the other things, labeling that works without org membership.
Okay.
And as far as I know, we've not had anyone accelerated in comms in quite some time.
Okay.
In the past, I've seen folks working on localizations have been brought into become org members at accelerated rates because localization require a certain number of approvers. But at this point in time, we're not accelerating people working on localizations anymore. We are adhering to the same policy for org membership, but I've seen that in the past.
Yeah, the only other place that I know that gets accelerated org membership is when a project is being donated to Kubernetes. In which case there's like, if they did not previously have org membership, but it still contributed to the project somehow, usually they will just be brought in at that point in time, like a few like select people. Essentially, if it's the project they're working on and that project becomes part of us, they then have this track record of all the PRs and all that anyway. But like I'd say in general, we've gotten a lot better as a project wide about not signing off on approved memberships. And then us as like GitHub admins / like new member coordinators, we are actively pushing back much more on people that do not have linked, like good enough linked items for org membership. I'm hoping like with all of that, at least going forward, we're generally in a better spot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It would be nice if it's only the release team, because that's easier to keep track of, since we actually know exactly who was a shadow for each cohort. Because that's one of the reasons why they need a process, because it occurs to me that even in earlier release teams where we were being diligent about scrubbing shadows who dropped out, I don't know that anyone outside of the release team was ever notified of that. And so, you know, for example, the org membership wouldn't be revoked because they wouldn't have done anything. And so the release team really needs a written process for that to say, oh, hey, you know, if this person got an accelerated org membership as part of the release team, then they need to, you know, you need to file a ticket on org to revoke their org status.
I think we for sure need a separate call to discuss this, preferably
with release team.
With release team and the GitHub admins as well, because we need to define a process. Maybe something like, hey, these are the list of people who have not progressed towards a lead role in the release team or are not selected as a shadow further, and they have gotten credentials, like Kubernetes or credentials, just because of their involvement as a shadow, and maybe you should remove them. Something like that. But we should probably discuss this further.
Yeah.
Any more comments? Yeah,
it did occur to me that independent of that discussion, we can also, so I mean, normally we're sort of bouncing, we're removing people's org membership if they haven't done anything in 18 months.
A year now.
A year, okay. We might want to also look at people, like, if we could craft this query, which would be hard. Like, one of the things I would want to look at is people who get their org membership and then have no significant activity, you know, like they got their org membership in the last, 3 months or whatever, and they've had no significant activity since then. Wouldn't necessarily be an automatic removal, but it's definitely something to look at and maybe ping their sponsors and ask what's going on.
A removal bot, even maybe, that says, hey, you haven't made anything to at least GitHub. Let us know if you still are doing things, kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah, the one issue with automation, we've talked about this a bit as GitHub admins, is that we do explicitly have roles that do rarely interact with GitHub directly. Like our code of conduct committee, our Slack admins, outside of approving requests for new channels, but not every Slack admin is on the list to do that. And then there are like leadership-ish type things where you might not be super, like, you'll still have activity in GitHub. Oh, this doesn't apply to new people, so never mind. It's like there are some, at least, cases where a automated process would not work.
Yeah, I was thinking more just, not that we wouldn't automatically remove people. We would just want to query the sponsors.
Let's say it can be done, but we have to see how much time it takes and what do we get out of it. But we also need to define things like what do we consider a significant contribution, because this was also brought up when we amended the new membership guidelines, because somebody can work on a KEP for maybe 2 years, which is a significant piece of work, and people can also work on multiple PRs, which can be moderate-ish, which can be considered significant. So, but again, just a quick time check on this. I think we shall for sure take it up as a follow-up item, and this would require a long deliberation. We have to talk about this. Does anyone have any concluding thoughts? Okay, none. Moving on to contributor comms. Does anyone have any updates?
Yes, I have many updates. We are working on, sorry, I lost the notes. Working on the deprecation of the yum and apt Kubernetes.io repos, getting that messaging kind of squared up and out the doors. Spent a little bit of time on that yesterday, as did Bob. We're also working on an automation directory that will help document how things are automated and where they're automated, that kind of thing when it comes to comms, because there's a lot going on kind of behind the scenes. And we have one blog in flight. I didn't see another one about the release team. So that's what's getting worked on in comms. Any questions for us? Cool.
Thank you, Chris. Moving ahead to contributor documentation, Bob, Craig.
Craig, do you want to start this out? Because this one's pretty much like all you.
Sure, at this point. So made good progress on getting various folks to test the configuration I had in the fork with the container image. I kind of put what I was going to say in the notes I had there, Ray, in case you don't want to verbatim type. The blocking issue kind of right now is that I had kind of tried to bite off too much in the first fork, which was not only to create the configuration, but also to pre-build that configuration as an image. And that way it improves startup time and also reproducibility, as well as allowing forks to easily pull that exact same container image. Obviously the container build process requires PROW and Google Cloud Build, which I don't know and have no expertise in, so other folks were trying to help. And the question came up about whether or not, where essentially that configuration should live and whether that configuration should be consolidated across multiple projects or be specific to Kubernetes. There's a whole bunch of unanswered questions that we're working with Kate's Infra to get good answers to, but that'll take a little bit more time. So in order to unblock getting the configuration into KK, I've just decided to go ahead and essentially not do the pre-build and leave the configuration in place, which means that every time you start a session with a dev container, whether that's local in Coder or in Codespaces, it will build the container from scratch, which will take a little bit more time, but it'll get the configuration there, and it decouples the effort to get the container pre-build published. So we'll endeavor to get that done also before KubeCon, but this will at least get us unblocked for getting the configuration into Kubernetes. Thoughts or feedback there?
+1 into getting at least something in there.
And then I guess the next step would be to update the Kates.dev onboarding training to also reference that.
Any more questions? None. Do we want to discuss the Devil Docs location thing? Bob, I saw your comment a couple of hours back.
Yeah, I forgot to put my name by this one. So we have gone back and forth on this for a while. There's been some pushback on moving docs outside of K community to other places. But frankly, like it is hard to find, discover this stuff there. It's part of the reason why we started serving stuff up on the website to make it more discoverable. Part of the problem is there are limitations with the current method of like ingesting it from other locations. It mostly works, but there are problems. And in the PR there, not PR, the issue, they would like to move at least some of the Devil docs, like the API information, all that, to live alongside KK. And to be in like in the docs repo in there. this is mostly because it stays versioned with the project. It would, like, when you're searching for stuff, like, and you're looking for scope stuff in there, you're looking in the repo. You're not going to go to K community to search for this stuff. And it's even more difficult with how, it works for us with everything broken down by SIG, in terms of like organizing the information, but that doesn't work for someone that's coming in and trying to actually, like, hunt down some devil docs. The other thing, like the alternative that I think of it being sort of versioned alongside KK, would be to just push everything to kates.dev and have all our docs regarding at least our core contributing to Kubernetes be there. I would also I would love to move our just general contributor guide there instead of having to pull them in. But for that, we will probably need to get a bit more consensus and need to get sign-off sort of at the community at large, just because moving this stuff is a community-wide thing. I personally think at this point, kates.dev has kind of, proven itself to be a good thing. More people are linking to it directly instead of, to a markdown file in K community. But I recognize my own bias there.
One other thing that I felt with moving docs is SEO or discoverability of the new location. I have personally faced problems finding Proud docs since they were moved from the test infra repo to a new repo, and there's a new website for Proud docs. Often when I Google something, they don't result in a query to the new site. I have to go to the GitHub and then I get a link to the new docs. So things like this have to be taken care of when we move docs.
Yeah, that is actually like a thing we should follow up with them about boosting the SEO of that one. It's also a little hard because Prow is literally inside K test infra instead of being its own separate thing. And there's a lot of sort of interdependency and links in that right now.
Yeah, due to this reason, I was favoring using the generate content thing in contributor site and keep the markdown where they are right now. So they would be surfaced at two places at the same time. But I do like if you can get the ACO right, then I think we can move the docs to ktest.dev.
Yeah, the one there are multiple issues with the little ingest script. The main thing is the docs have to be formatted in a way, because Hugo markdown and GitHub markdown are not the same thing. They have differences and they have various problems. And pretty much the reason why we wrote the markdown style guide was to make it so that way it would work in both places. So if we have had this happen before where people make changes in the original location, it gets pulled into the website and then it breaks the page because it doesn't render correctly, or just has broken links and things like that. That's the main limitation with the ingestion method.
I'm also trying to find someone who can understand the Bash and Go, and specifically the Goldmark renderer, to essentially use whatever is used in Hugo to render these pages.
Yeah,
but I'm not getting someone who can understand that level of Bash yet.
Yeah, I am both very proud and also not proud of that crazy amount of Bash that I wrote.
But if if you can get another Bob, that would have been better.
I honestly think like the best way to do it is like just to forego the regexes altogether and a lot of the bash altogether, and instead just use either Goldmark or one of the libraries that understands Markdown to be able to pull out the links that way. Because a lot of the complicated mess is trying to deal with all the different kinds of ways of linking in Markdown. So if just using a library that already understands it and can break out the links and can basically do the substitution, that would be simplify things significantly.
Makes sense. Any more comments on the Devil Ducks location? Cool. Let's move ahead. Back to Nigel. Moderation in media.
Hello. Yeah, the main update is that things are not as bad as they seemed before. I think it's a combination of one, there being a lot lighter load of videos. And I haven't figured out what's going on there. But essentially the Zapier automation is working for Docs and Infra. And then I remade the Zap for ContribEx, and that started working again. So all of the Zapier folks that have been onboarded, it is working properly. And then we're going to onboard, LTS pretty soon as well. My guess is that duplicating the Zap so many times, like something got borked inside of it, and like for some reason like reauthing wasn't work, turning it on and off wasn't working, so I just like made a whole new one from scratch, and that resolved the issues with ContribEx. I don't know what's going on with Spline, but I did see that the release meeting went up from yesterday, and so that seemed to work. And then there was a networking video that went up, and I messaged in the networking SIG channel to just be like, hey y'all, I haven't seen any uploads in ages, like are you all still doing things the same way? And didn't really get a response. There's one person that was like, yeah, no, I see recent videos in there. I'm like, could you link them to me please, because I don't see them. And I didn't get a response there. But essentially looking at the volume of videos, I'm just like, something's going on. I don't know what's happening. But for now, I know that the automation that we have, the Zapier stuff is working for the parts that we turned it on for.
Do you have time like next week to maybe take a look at it collectively?
Yes, and I will be traveling, so time zones will be difficult. No, it's totally fine. Like I'm gonna keep like US hours, but yeah, I just
where are you though?
Depends on what time in the week.
Oh,
but
Europe? I mean, give me
Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I can do an early morning meeting, no problem, man. Whatever you need.
Yeah, just doing some traveling around before Bilbao Open Source Summit, but still working. Yeah, we can definitely take a look at it, but there's not much that we can see. Like Spline is fairly opaque from our side. And so like I have to, I guess, individually reach out to these SIGs and just be like, yo, what's going on with your recordings? Like maybe networking and Gateway API decided that they were going to record differently. Maybe when Europe went on holiday over the summer, nobody was having meetings. Maybe, any number of things could have happened. But yeah, right now I'm just confused mostly. And just slowly moving to onboard more SIGs onto the Zapier automation. That's the only solution I have. And then for the Slack stuff, I don't know if Bob wants to say a word about the org members channel.
Oh yeah. So we've discussed the problems of the Slack channels here in the past. And we decided to move forward with basically just taking the old Kubernetes contributors channel and changing that to Kubernetes new contributors, just because people would basically pop in there and then be like, hey, I'm new, please help me. And most of our maintainers had essentially turned it off and left. And we have a new channel, Kubernetes org members. That should be the center point now for all our general contributor comms, at least for Slack comms. Just because that should be a lot more focused. The Slack moderators have also been told to be very aggressive with the moderation in there, in terms of, like, if someone pops in, just like asks, hi, I'm new, someone please mentor me, to like remove the message and like essentially remove them from the channel and direct them towards the Kubernetes new contributors channel.
I did see a little warning message when I joined the channel, like, if you ask how do I contribute, you're gonna be booted. I was like, oh damn, all right, cool.
The funny, we have similar, not the booting, but like, here's, don't ask, like, look at these resources before you ask questions in the Kubernetes new contributor one. Similar thing when you join the channel, but that does not stop people from doing that. So
is it a channel that you have to manually join, or is it one that you're popped into when you join the workspace?
You have to manually join it.
Interesting. Okay.
In fact, it looks like you have to post a message in it to join it.
Oh, what?
You shouldn't have to do that to join the Kubernetes.
I just went there and it says you'll join this channel when you send this message. I don't see a join button.
Interesting.
For which channel? The org channel or the new channel?
Kubernetes-org-members.
Interesting.
That's really weird.
New.
Like, we have a lot of people that have joined that never sent anything.
Yeah, yesterday or a couple of days ago when I did it, I just got a message that was like, "Oh, you don't send beginner questions in here."
Yeah, I see that there are people who joined but haven't sent messages. I don't understand why it shows that way for me.
Yeah, weird.
That one we might have to follow up on. The other follow-up action that we have at this point would be to update our docs. We have locations that say join Kubernetes contributors. Okay, Ray just joined and did not have a send message thing, so
yeah,
I just found that it's a corner case thing. So if you say you want to send a new message and you type that as the path, that's the message you get. But if you browse for it, you can join it.
Oh, got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
That I get, because you're doing it through the new message dialogue.
Yeah.
I also joined right now without any message, so that checks out.
And if you do go to any other SIG meetings, please mention the channel change there, just to get as many people as we can in the Kubernetes org member channel.
I'm sure we'll plug it at the summit too. It's like, hey, go here, talk to people.
You're all here. You should be joining here.
Yeah. Oh, I have a question. It's probably not the right meeting for it, but a quick one. If you're not an org member, can you get a talk accepted to the CFP for the contributor summit?
Isn't entry dependent upon?
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, since you have to be an org member to attend, you're going to need to either be an org member. Well, we do make exceptions because we have guest speakers.
Yeah, we have had like previously members of the TOC and some other groups attend to
Okay.
do sessions.
Yeah.
But that is like you're gonna have to be very like have something killer to be able to to do that, or be in a
Right.
or in like again a TOC type position.
Sounds good. All right, thanks. That's all for moderation and media, unless folks have questions.
No questions? Awesome. Um, Moving on to GitHub management. We have 10 minutes and 3 more topics of discussions, just a time check. Bob, Priyanka, do you want to add anything?
And I don't like we have some stuff that we're working through, but I don't think there's too much to update here right now.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess
Maybe
the
there
one
would be.
thing I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The one thing I think would be like we do actually have a Kubernetes enterprise account now that can it's the GitHub account that you can basically join multiple orgs to.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But we are like we haven't pursued, you know, integrating all the orgs and all that yet.
I think one other thing would be just as a PSA, the org audit would probably happen next month. We plan to give like 2 weeks of headway after we generate the list, that if anyone feels like they should be part of the org but are going to be incorrectly removed, they should comment there. And we probably won't mention people in the issue deliberately, just so that we know who is like actively looking at announcements to dev and who is not. It's at this point we're just auditing the list of people to be removed because the number is quite large and we have to do some checks before we publish the list. Priyanka, please go ahead.
I think you might be muted if you're talking.
Not yet.
Right now.
Okay, so Priyanka is going to type in the chat and I'll probably dictate when she types it. Meanwhile, can we get an update from elections and we will come back to the chat? Josh, do you have any updates?
Yeah. The steering election is currently in process. Well, the code of conduct election is concluded. And the steering election is currently in progress. And this is actually the first time we have done 2 elections concurrently. So it was nice to see that that worked. I was expecting to at least get more complaints from people getting confused about which election they were voting in, but didn't get any. And so yeah, steering elections in progress. And it's a good slate from my perspective. We have 11 candidates for the 4 steering committee positions. So not only, you know, will we get a good steering committee out of this, but we then also effectively have a bench in case anybody needs to drop out of steering before the term is up, which is a concern that we always have if we don't have a lot of candidates. So that's in good shape. And And in fact, it's in good enough shape that I haven't voted myself because I'm having trouble deciding how to rank people. So the so yeah, so that's where we're going with elections. I mean, in CNCF land, I'm trying to actually get some help for building out the test infrastructure for Electo, because there are a bunch of things that we don't have automated testing for right now, such as the container image build. And that came up as a problem when starting the steering election. But it's going well for now.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. I think it's a great problem to have when you can't decide whom to vote for.
Yeah. That's exactly like, I mean, I'll tell you, within the community, we had a few people who are like, okay, I'll throw my hat in the ring for steering if we don't have enough candidates. And none of those people had to step forward. So it's great to have that many people who really want to do steering this time around, and can make the time.
It's awesome.
Any more questions for Josh? We will go back to GitHub management after this.
Yeah. Oh, one minor thing that's still unresolved so that people know about it is we've had a de facto rule for a while that people can't be on Code of Conduct Committee and steering at the same time, but that rule has never been formally documented anywhere. And that became a real issue this election when we had a candidate running for both. Stephen drafted something for it, but it had some issues. So we're still working on text for that.
Yeah, I think we need to work on it. Essentially steering.
Yeah.
Cool. If there are no questions for elections, we'll go back to Priyanka's point. So Priyanka wanted to update on the Peribolos incident. So the recent repo management changes are stable now. There were some teams who were getting removed from repos due to bad configs, but they have also been resolved. And just as a PSA, if you still see any problem, if anyone is seeing the recordings, just spoke on GitHub management on how, like, if you're removed or not. At some point from my side, probably in the next year's NPL's meeting in September, we should raise this up. If any SIG is seeing changes or unwanted removals, they should probably flag it to us on GitHub management. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns on Peribolos? None. Cool.
Mostly just thanks for working through it. That was I know difficult to get through.
Big +1 to this, and also the incident happened at a really bad time of the day for people like managing this incident. So kudos to Madhav and Priyanka on this.
Yeah. For the record, like you don't have to stay up like super late to handle that stuff. It's okay. Thank you, but like, oh, I know I've said it already.
Yeah, much appreciated though. Yeah.
Cool. I think we just have one open item left. Reminder on the ContribEx ML mailing list changeover. Bob.
Yep, and that's pretty much it. Probably Friday after or Thursday afternoon, Friday morning. I will, export the list, move everyone over to the new one, and essentially lock down the previous one. And then we'll all be using, a Kubernetes.io address for everything.
That would be awesome. And fingers crossed for no problems over the weekend.
Think of it like when we migrated KDev, it was actually like a very smooth transition. So hoping there won't be any issues.
Nice. And with that, we just have 1 minute left, and we're at the end of the agenda. Does anyone want to bring up anything which is not on the agenda? Sandeepan?
Yes, so I was looking for ways to contribute and get involved in the SIG ContribEx community, and I came across these two things called APAC coordinator and new contributor ambassador in the role handbooks, and so I was interested in how I can get involved in that role, or is that still relevant, because I see that they have not been updated for a long time.
I can tell about Epic coordinators. Epic coordinators hasn't largely met in the last 3 years. Does anyone have any thoughts on new contributor ambassadors? We can also potentially take this up async in the channel.
Yeah, the new like that role has not effectively been doing it. Like no one's been doing it for years, and honestly probably needs to be removed. It looks
but
like
I
it's
think,
actually mostly blank.
Sandeepan, I think you should just poke on the SIG ContribEx channel, and we can take things forward on the initiatives that we are currently working on and who needs help. That's a great way to like let people know that you want to work on things. And personal suggestion, also do let like what are your interest areas. Like if you have any specific area that you want to work on in ContribEx, that would be really helpful. Then people can help you much better.
Yeah, I will let you know.
Awesome, thanks. And we are already 1 minute over, but thank you everyone for an awesome discussion today. And with that, happy time of the day and happy rest of the day to you all. Thank you. Meet you in 2 weeks.
Happy time of the day.
And just to remind everybody, the